Heads up, everyone. Montessori is not a luxury brand. Here's what to say to people who ask you otherwise.
That's right. Good morning, all you beautiful viewers out there. You can see we're back at the desk configuration, so it's an exciting time. And that's because we have an important topic. As Aubrey said, there is a misconception that Montessori is for the wealthy, or the elite, or for only some people. And that is just not the case.
No.
I mean, in fact, if you look at the origin of Montessori, it is the opposite of that. So when the next time you are, buzzing around, telling people that you're thinking of doing Montessori and you're starting to get some weird looks, or you're on Instagram and you come across a post where someone's ranting about how Montessori is just too expensive, these are the things that we as Montessorians are going to recommend that you do. You're going to do these three things. David already mentioned one of these things. I sure did.
And that is to tell everyone the story of the origins, the real origins of Montessori education.
That's right.
It didn't start in fancy private schools for the privileged. It didn't. In fact, Maria Montessori called these children who had everything that they needed pampered. She said
it's true.
That this method, she says, even works for the pampered children.
That's
and
true.
That is no less true today than it was back then. So let's talk about that origin of the Maria Montessori's original method.
Yeah, so Maria was a doctor. She was one of the first, maybe the first. I think there's some who speculate she might be not quite been the first, but certainly among the first female doctors in all of Italy. And
Yes.
she worked really, really hard to get into that position.
Yes.
But very early on in her career, she became amazed by the power of children and wanted to study and understand children. And she became somewhat notable for this in the Italian press and in society. And at some point she was invited to, create a school, although I don't know that. I don't think that's how they originally had imagined. How did she come to this work that she became famous for? What took her from the role of doctor to the Maria that we know and love?
Well, Maria was actually pretty well known in her field, in her community in Rome at the time, even before the Casa dei Bambini. A lot of people have this conception that Maria Montessori's name wasn't really known, that she wasn't really a figure until after she had made this important discovery of children.
All,
it's actually not. She was very, very, she had a really good hard work ethic, and she had already published papers. She had never written a book, but she was well known for speaking in society, and she had already been doing a lot of work with children who had special needs. In fact, at this point, even before the Casa originally was born, she had been working with special needs children under educators, we would call them today. In her time, they were really thought of as doctors, who were working with children with special needs. She had been working in those situations under mentorship by other people. Mm-hmm. And they had been teaching her about what children need, and she had this passion for helping the underprivileged.
Yeah.
And so these were children that she was already working with that were under-resourced and had, not been given a lot of really nice stuff. They were kind of just tucked away, or their parents didn't know what to do with them. These are not just children that we would consider neurodivergent today. Mm-hmm. These kids had physical illnesses as well. And so rickets was very, very common.
Yeah, right.
I would imagine, I'm just proposing this, I would imagine some of them might have had lead poisoning and other chemical damage, from, people just didn't know. There were a lot of
other things that we would
right?
be able to identify today. They might have had maybe a form of autism.
Yeah, maybe they were born super premature.
Yes.
These are children that just were not developing according to the normal
expectations. And at the time, they didn't understand, and they really didn't care, I think, is a part of it. They cared enough not to turn them out into the street, but the level of care and attention on children, or unfortunately on many who were not in the upper class, was very poor.
Yeah.
Like the attention and the respect given. And that was especially true for children. They just were not respected. And so she was in this environment, this, I think it was called an asylum in her day, and working with these special needs children and kind of starting to observe. And like you said, she was really well known. She had started to gain notoriety. The camera loved her, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Like she was interesting. She was a great self-promoter. She was young and vivacious. They loved to go and listen to, this young female doctor. She was a bit of a, I don't know, what is it, a phenomenon or something? Or
she was. At the time, there weren't any female doctors. And so today it just seems commonplace that, if she were alive today. But back then it was a rarity to find a woman doctor. So even though she wasn't the only woman doctor ever in her era, she was rare in her community and well known and very well spoken. She was known for being able to pull together a really riveting speech, and she was very vivacious. And I think we tend to think of her as kind of studious, today, but she was actually very extroverted and very good with people and very willing to talk to them and wanting to have a lot of intellectual conversations. And so when this community of children was discovered, and they were trying to revive this very under-resourced, underprivileged part of the community, and I say that very kindly. I mean, it was a very devastating area to live in.
And which neighborhood are you talking about here?
San Lorenzo.
Okay, so you're right, and just to kind of connect the dots, because I know not everybody's totally up on this, but so basically that combination of notoriety and her work with children and her obvious desire to serve, right? She could have had a very different career, but she gave herself to children who were, and especially the children who were suffering from maladies or other issues that were often just discounted or overlooked in a time when children were often said to be seen and not heard. And so this kind of combined together to draw the attention of a committee that wanted to create a school of sorts. I guess we kindly think of it as a school, but in reality, I think it was more like a, well, it was a holding pen, basically, in this apartment complex. And that's where the casa comes from, right? So what was it? It wasn't a school, right? Like they didn't intend for it to be a school.
No, it wasn't a school at first, and it wasn't intended to be a school. It was really that these children were running around in this community, basically an apartment complex, unattended as their parents were working during the day.
These are the working poor. The children of the working poor.
And as they were running around under a tenant, you can imagine all the mischief that they were getting into. And so really it was a won't somebody think of the children kind of moment for the wealthy women who were, pitching in their money and their time and energy to volunteer to revive this poor area. And Maria Montessori was of those women, even though she spent most of her time studying and doing her doctoral work. She was in this community, and they knew of her, and she was asked to give a speech and given the opportunity to head up the education of these little beings. And, at the time, there was not a lot of thought difference between the poorest children and children with special needs and disabilities. They were kind of thought of as like the same kind of kids.
Yeah, we talk about social disease, right? We talk about,
right.
We used to imprison the poor.
Right. So was it a prejudice at the time? Yes. And it was a prejudice that Maria Montessori was very willing to come and step in, and that she really didn't know what was going to happen, when she was there. So she came, she gave a little speech. She was not the full-time teacher of the classroom, but her discoveries there really were revolutionary worldwide. And what she did was she just stepped in and she just started asking herself a very simple question, a question that you can ask yourself in your home environment too, and that is, what do these children need? What brings them joy? what do they seem to thrive with? What nurtures them? And as she was asking these very basic questions, she was doing her doctory things. She was measuring them and weighing them and, checking on their health to see if their little cheeks were pink or not. And what she noticed was that the more opportunities for purposeful work, for the children to feel empowered in their little environment, the more beauty was part of the environment. Nothing devastated her emotionally more than seeing children confined within a really ugly set of just four walls with nothing to do. And so she and the women who were donating their time and attention and materials created this lovely little place for children to thrive. And as Maria Montessori watched, she observed very carefully and noticed, these are the kind of things that are helping the children to thrive. These are the kind of things that are happening that's bringing more pink to their little cheeks and more joy into their lives. And the more consistency there was and the more little changes there were to help these children become more independent and self-possessed and to care about their own environment and to participate in the care and taking of it and the care of each other as well, just the more the children flourished. And this is the true beginning of the Montessori method. This is where it began. It did not begin among wealthy parents for their wealthy children. It began as an initiative to help the poorest citizens of Rome.
Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
And in particular the children. And so that is the origin of the whole method of Montessori. And from there, once people learned the kind of magical Montessori wisdom that was coming out of this method, they wanted to start applying it in different situations. And Maria actually was skeptical of this at first. You can quote me on that. She wasn't sure if this method was going to work for the wealthy children. She knew it would work with children who in some way were purer.
Let's be clear on this. It wasn't because she thought, because this is where the attitudes of the era are important to understand. She didn't think of these children as defective.
Right.
She saw within them pure, divine, genuine potential. In fact, she thought that the material wealth of those with privilege was going to be limiting. She had the inverse thought. That's why she thought that that even wealthy children could benefit from this, because look, you can have any kind of spiritual practice you want or no spiritual practice at all and enjoy Montessori, but it is true that she was heavily influenced by her Catholic teaching. And she's seeing in the child, and she's thinking about something like the Sermon on the Mount and Blessed are the poor and so forth, when she's thinking about how material attachments can deform a person's life away from good or God or the soul or however you want to define that. That was a motivator to her, and it helped inspire her to see these children as something different than what most people saw. So when they hired her, they just thought she would keep them corralled so they stopped tearing the carpet off the floor.
It was basically like, can you create just like a daycare?
They're damaging the property. Would you please? So
these children will stop running around wild. And of course, the wealthy women who were volunteering, they were like, we can donate our old toys and lovely stuff to give the children something to play with. And that's really all it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than that. Maria Montessori was not the teacher of the classroom. She was the doctor that was hired to come in and check on these children's health, as in for their physical and emotional well-being. And now it grew into something much more wonderful than that. But it was
their expectation.
Despite their expectation that it would just be a place to keep the kids from hurting themselves, or damaging the property.
That's
really
right.
Mostly damaging the property.
So that's your first tip. If somebody says, "Isn't Montessori only for some people, or isn't it just for the wealthy or the elite, or I'm too poor for that, or it's not,"
I wish I had the money to do that, but I can't.
The answer is that's just because that's the way we often see Montessori today. it's often in these private schools, or it's really gatekeeping or something like that.
Right.
That's not at all where it came from. It's not what Maria dreamt of, and it's not what Montessori is all about. Montessori is for every child, even the rich.
That's right. Even the rich, yes. So number two, the second thing that you should really tell them is that Montessori is found all over the world. I mean, so we know the origins of this method was very humble, came from humble roots, but once Maria Montessori, good thing that she had a little bit of...
Well, her pizzazz and her
like
media savviness really
she was
made the difference.
The OG entrepreneur. If she were online, oh my goodness, so many followers would she have if she were on Instagram, because she really was always in the thick of things.
Yeah.
And she was a great self-promoter. And she did it with heart. She wasn't self-promoting because she personally wanted fame. She was self-promoting because she really believed that she had discovered something incredible about the growth and development of children. And she wanted everybody to know. Mm-hmm. And she was really good at promoting this idea, this new philosophy that she had witnessed emerging in the Casa dei Bambini. And so Montessori education, it really took off after the people in the United States found out about it. And it just so happened that there was a reporter who was a journalist who hooked up with Maria and was like, he was out for fame himself, promoting his journalism, but he was like, what a great story. Let's bring it to America. Let's make it big. Let's make a splash. And it did. It made a huge splash here in the United States. Maria came across the ocean multiple times.
There's a little book about that journey that's really cute, too.
There is, yes. She came to America several times, and in fact, she came to San Francisco in 1915 for the Pan-Pacific Expo.
That's right.
Which, if you come visit San Francisco, you can go hang out at the Palace of the Arts.
Palace of Fine Arts.
Palace of Fine Arts, yeah. It's there. And
now, the glass classroom is not there anymore, but this was the location.
It was the location. Yeah. So I know I always love going there, and I'm like, Maria, every time I see it. And she also, many of you may not know, she actually gave her first trainings in the United States in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, of course, she started in Europe, but when she started to come to the United States more often, that was where she gave her first training session in Los Angeles. Was the first cohort of Montessori trained teachers by her. So after that, it just made the rounds worldwide. It really was the big news of the time.
Because it worked. That was why it caught on.
Yeah.
She really had proven that these children could teach themselves to read. And not just these children, but any child, as we would say today. Of course, there's a range, a spectrum, but your typical child could had the ability to self-teach and could learn to write and read when given the proper environment. And this was revolutionary, and it was replicable. And that's when people saw miracle made real.
That's right. So you can now find Montessori education across socioeconomic status, all over the whole world. You can find Montessori in every single continent except for Antarctica. Yeah. And you did some analysis of the Child Over the Redwoods membership over time, and found that we actually have member representation from every continent.
Every continent, that's right.
Do you remember how many countries?
I don't anymore.
So
it was
many.
Well over 100 countries, all over the world.
Yeah.
And which is really gratifying. And we're a pretty small little family business, so it's representative of how powerful it is. So that's your second comeback. Isn't it elite? No, it's actually found everywhere and in all kinds of environments, including at home, on home budgets.
That's
so
right.
You don't have to have a big, fancy, super well financed school to do Montessori. You'll find it in lots of places and in lots of ways.
That's right.
Okay.
So number 3, there is a third thing you must do if you want to help us bust this myth that Montessori is really only for the privileged, and that is to
share your own DIY.
Yes.
This goes back to what we were just saying about the material. So a lot, I think, if people know anything about Montessori, and frankly, many people don't know much about it at all, but if they do, they might have a sense of like, it's a daycare thing, or it's for like peacefulness, or it is for materials, like it is the pink tower or the beads or something. Like they may have walked into their child or grandchild or a neighbor's child's school in Montessori preschool or something and seen materials and they're like, oh, that's what it is. Like Montessori's the thing with the stuff. And that is just not the case. I mean, but it's such an identifiable term that even like today, if you search for Montessori materials, you'll find all kinds of stuff, some of which is good and some of which is just outright junk.
That's true.
That's labeled Montessori. Because putting the label Montessori on your toy,
or on your daycare, I will also say,
like it gives it cachet, right? It elevates it, and that's because we have this perception of like there's prestige in the material. So this gizmo that I bought on Amazon, it says Montessori on it. It must be better for the child. It's like healthy. It's just like the broccoli of toys. That's not
right. Yeah,
no,
I don't
no,
know.
no.
If
don't
you
fall
notice,
for it, friends.
I don't know if you have noticed this, but when I go into a generic store these days, if I see the word Montessori on the label, I notice that those toys actually can have a higher price tag on them.
Yeah, totally. This goes to this whole perception, like the luxury brand is more expensive than the average brand, but it isn't helping, right? This is this is why it's important to counter this. Like for one thing, maybe those are Montessori, but even if they are better, like there are better and worse materials to buy, and we would say there are some materials that are worth buying because they're too hard to DIY, or maybe you just want it, or you're going to reuse it. Yeah. But the magic of Montessori, we say this every week, is not in the materials. The magic is not in the materials. She created the materials in response to seeing what the children were doing, right? So she saw what the children were doing, and then she thought about adapting something existing or creating something new to facilitate it. It is just a tool. Now, some of those tools can be very, very useful, but it is not anything more than the tool. Like the thing itself will not teach the concept.
Yeah, the magic that's happening is coming from the child.
That's right.
Maria Montessori tells us this over and over and over and over and over. And I know it's really hard to believe it when you see someone else's beautiful homeschool room or you see a beautiful Montessori classroom. You tend to think it's in the creation of the classroom or the homeschool room itself. You think it's in the stuff. And everything in our culture is designed to make us believe this. The way everything is, even if what you're looking at isn't intentionally marketed to you, it is part of our consumerist mindset right now to just believe that the stuff is what's making the magic happen. And in fact, Maria says over and over and over, the child has a potential that is unknowable. It's every child is born with an immense potential for life and for joy and for learning, and the magic is there. It's going to happen if your child interacts with anything in their environment. So we're just trying to make the most nourishing environment that we personally have available, and maybe that nourishing environment is your garden outside. And Marie would be totally cool with that, even if you don't have a pink tower. Absolutely right. Or it's in the materials that you've made yourself. So last week or the week before, we did a segment on the golden beads and how to DIY a set. If you didn't watch that, go back and check it out. It's a good one. We also we've got even a printable version of the golden beads because it doesn't matter ultimately. Now, we would suggest something like a golden bead. The physicality of actual beads is really great. But in a pinch, you can use a paper version. Or corn. Or like pieces of, or anything that's a similarly shaped in small size. You can set them in a row and have them count, because that's what they're doing. You're helping them take an abstract concept, which is a number, and physically represent that. That's the whole purpose of it. The beads do it very brilliantly, and they allow for all kinds of adaptation.
But again, the magic is in the child's ability to make that connection. You're just facilitating it. So the counter to this is Montessori is not in the stuff. In fact, let me show you some of the things that we've made, or none of the things that we made, and just tell you about some of the experiences we've had.
That's right.
So 3 tips. If somebody comes to you and says, Montessori isn't for us, I wish I had the money to do it. You say,
or if you yourself found yourself
That's right.
momentarily believing it, here's what you tell yourself as well.
Number one.
Retell yourself or to your friend the origins of Maria Montessori's original method.
Number 2.
Right? That Casa dei Bambini.
That's right. Number 2.
Number 2, tell your friend or tell yourself, remind yourself that Montessori is found all over the globe in all kinds of social situations.
Even in your home.
Even in your home. Yes.
That's right. And number 3?
And number 3, share some of the Montessori DIYs that you have done. Even if it's just like, I got this toilet paper roll and my child is putting a little ping pong ball through it, that they found around the house or something. Like, doesn't have to be a fancy DIY.
Not at all.
But your explanation of how your child is engaging with the real world around them in a hands-on, concrete way, like, that's the magic.
Yeah, right? And in fact, this is a great segue into the what you really do want to know, which is the method and the theory. You want to have that knowledge. And if you're curious to learn about that, we actually can help you learn that at over on our website, childoftheredwoods.com. We have a number of programs that will teach you how to bring the theory to life, the philosophy. We have a membership community where we do thematic units of study every month that go along with our core curriculum, which we're going to show you in just a minute. And we can show you how to put those things together so that when you do have a ping pong ball and a toilet paper roll, you can think about what kinds of lessons might fit for that and what kind of concepts your child is learning through it.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. We had a couple of good comments here.
Oh, lovely.
Petra says, I wish every school was a Montessori school.
I do too. Yeah. I wouldn't even care if it were called Montessori. I just want the Montessori.
But I don't think Maria herself would care. That wasn't her vision.
No, it wasn't. I just want the method to be in public education. And that is something that I always worked for when teaching. To our comfort, a lot of Maria Montessori's ideas did get transferred into some mainstream philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, you see it in some kind of modern math material and thinking.
You do. You see it in the way teachers are now teaching math in a much more concrete way. Maybe they're not using the golden beads specifically, but they are starting to use a lot more manipulatives to demonstrate the concepts. And base 10 blocks are essentially the golden beads, and those are in a lot of classrooms. So
yeah,
it's
but
great.
what's missing too often, I think, still is the heart.
Right.
So you can, and this goes to that point about the third point about it's not the materials. Like, you can have the materials, but if you don't have
the respect for
the child, the philosophy,
the ability to follow the child,
the belief that the child has this innate ability to learn and confidence in that, then you're limiting yourself. And we have to learn that. All of us. You can learn it if you're worried that it just won't come. It will. We all had to learn it because we don't live in a world where we expect children to be able to do certain things. We expect too little of them in some ways and too much of them in others. And with the Montessori philosophy, you can learn to be a better understander of childhood, a better parent and a better teacher. And we have one other comment from Tedley Ever After. She says, DIYing my colored beads right now as we speak.
Yay!
I wonder what you're making them out of. Friends, by the way, Tedley Ever After has a channel with an adorable little bear. Of course,
two bears.
Two adorable bears. You should check that out.
Sometimes penguins.
They just had a noir adventure I was watching, so it's very fun. I love to see the creativity of our community and the human race. So, hi everybody.
Hello.
Hi. I heard my name. You said Mr. Bunny, right?
Yes.
Oh, yay,
Yes,
I
we
knew it, I
did.
knew it. Well, I had a question, and I hope you don't mind me asking. And I suppose you don't, since you were just saying my name, Mr. Bunny.
Well, I would like to hear your question.
Yeah, well, it's about my mommy bunny. Yeah, she was wanting to make some beads, and I wanted to help. And I don't know, is that something that's okay? Can Mr. Bunny help a mommy bunny make beads for Montessori?
All right, let me hear this again.
Yeah.
So your mommy bunny is making DIYing some Montessori materials,
Yeah.
making some beads, and you, her child, also want to help her make
Yeah.
these DIY Montessori materials?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the answer is yes.
I can.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, don't you have to be special to do that?
No, in fact, in our community, many of the children of the Redwoods are helping their parents make the Montessori materials.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it's not just something for mommies. It's something for everyone.
Wow, I think that's great. Yeah, all right, I'm going to go back and tell her that I am supposed to keep helping.
That's right.
All right, bye.
Thank you, Mr. Bunny.
Well, Mr. Bunny does bring up a good point, as often he does, which is that it's important to involve your child in the learning process.
Yes.
In fact, it's coming from them, right? You talked about that a moment ago. Like, where does the learning come from? It's not the material. It's not even really the philosophy. It's the child himself or herself. And you want to create an environment where that child is allowed to explore those things. And so that's where the materials and the philosophy can come into play. But the best learning, whether it's Montessori or any other philosophy, always centers on the learner. Involving the learner in the process of the learning is the most important, perhaps I would say it's the most important thing you can do. The one most important thing you could do, because it gives them buy-in, it gets them excited. So if you're DIYing your materials and your child is old enough to help, and they probably are curious enough to help, let them do it. There's something they can do along the way. They'll have fun, they'll respect the materials, they'll learn something, you get quality time. It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely a win-win. Our kids helped us with the Montessori materials often.
And Tedley says that her little guy helps all the time, so I'll tell Mr. Bunny that.
All right, yay for Theo.
All right, well, we have a very special activity for the second half of our show today. It is Mardi Gras on the 4th, which is Tuesday, also called Fat Tuesday. And Mardi Gras is a celebration that is associated with the Lenten cycle. So the Lenten cycle is the period of days before Easter. It starts on a Wednesday, Ash Wednesday, and so the day before is like a celebration. And in New Orleans, the celebration is called Mardi Gras. You can also find it expressed as Carnival. In other cultures, many parishes or churches will do pancake dinners on the Tuesday before. And basically the idea is you celebrate.
This is hilarious, right?
You eat the pancakes or you have the fun or whatever.
The idea is you're using up your eggs, right? Getting ready for a fast. But I think we've been egg fasting.
I haven't seen eggs in I don't know how long.
We've been egg fasting for a long time now.
I have not seen a carton of eggs in like a month, I think, at least.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was thinking might have to make my pancakes with flax or egg replacer these days, which is no problem if you're vegan, right? That's the way my mother always makes her pancakes these days.
That's right.
With egg replacer, but I miss my eggs. Yeah.
Well, Mardi Gras is a here in the U.S. at least, it's something that a lot of people celebrate, even if they aren't following a liturgical Christian practice that also celebrates Lent, because it's a lot of fun. So we would encourage you to celebrate Mardi Gras, or to at least make your child aware of Mardi Gras, because it's an important part of cultural studies, which is what you would find in the humankind section, right? Learning about the fundamental needs of humans is an essential part, especially in the lower L curriculum.
That's right.
And so studying something like Mardi Gras is par for the course. It really helps fit to that. And like what parts of the fundamental needs? Well, there would be spiritual needs, of course. There would also be celebration that would go in there. And then digging into Mardi Gras itself is really fun because there's all kinds of symbolism related to like the colors and practices. You can study the parade itself, the Mardi Gras parade in New Orleans, or you can study it and how it's expressed in other places. take this as an opportunity. It's coming up. It's next week to kind of do some cultural exploration because
Now,
that is a part of the lower L curriculum
it
for
is.
sure.
You mentioned the fundamental needs of humans. This is actually from a lesson that we've titled Understanding the Fundamental Needs of Humans Across the World. It is a classic lower elementary Montessori lesson for those of you curious. And you would be studying these things, be kind of interesting to see how they relate to the idea of Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday. So these needs are, I'll read them in order, if that's okay. Shelter, clothing, I'm thinking clothing is going to be a part of this. Nutrition, also a part of this. I'm thinking about those pancakes. Defense, transportation. I would be thinking in terms of transportation, how do you get yourself to a Mardi Gras festival?
I was thinking about the crew floats.
Oh, yes. Cool. Communication. Yeah, that's also a fundamental need. Health and wellness. Art and music, spirituality and religion, philosophy, social acceptance and support, love, and vanitas, which is vanity or like having a good self-esteem.
Yeah, pride in yourself.
So we can look at any cultural celebration and we can say, hey, this actually checks off several of these fundamental needs that we have as humans, and that is definitely part of our, what we're doing with humankind.
Totally. I love the fundamental needs of human as a part of the study. It's not something that I explored until I started to really work on the lower elementary curriculum with you. But I think it's brilliant. I use it all the time now with our own kids as part of the homeschooling, and they're older teens. And I use it for myself because it really, I think we often hear like the Maslow's hierarchy of need, or you need food, shelter, and clothing. But what Maria is pointing out in this, or Maria and Mario, I guess, who developed this part of the curriculum, is that it's actually a lot more. It's not just food, shelter, and clothing. Humans need all kinds of other stuff. And if you think about human societies across the globe and throughout all time, you will find these markers.
Right.
And that tells you something important. Like all human society needs some cultural expressions. They have some attitude about religion and spirituality. They have their own foods and what food represents. And that's can be found, like you said, in Mardi Gras.
Their own manner of shelter.
Yeah.
And also, we as human beings are vain. Like, we care about generally like what we wear.
Totally.
Not just for practicality, but for beauty as well. And there's nothing to be ashamed about in that.
I think it's an important one to remember, that it's okay to have self-love.
It also definitely comes into play when we're talking about something like Mardi Gras.
That's right. Okay, so let's talk about how you might incorporate Mardi Gras celebrations in your home. Aside from, let's say, if you are in a spiritual practice that celebrates something like Lent or Fat Tuesday or pancake, have your pancake suppers. How might you do that? So what are some of the techniques that come to mind for you?
Throw the ball to me. We mentioned the pancakes already. I would probably also mention the decoration. It's a fun time to dress up and celebrate, and you can do this. You can think about that carnival, or you could think about the Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans, but they both have to do with dressing up, bright fun colors, wearing masks. You probably are aware of the little plastic bead necklaces that they use in New Orleans. Don't use them.
No. They're toxic.
Yeah, they're literally toxic. You can look it up if you want to be scared, or you can just take our word for it. All right, so just don't buy them, don't use them. They're not sustainable. They're not designed for kids. You don't want your kids' mouths to end up on them, and
the paint can be very toxic.
And you don't want the paint in your home. All right, so don't use them. But there are lots of other different kinds of decorations that you can do. There are a lot of child-safe, child-made for children, or other non-toxic ways that we can decorate ourselves. So use those. Put on as many. My children really loved putting on as many necklaces as they could put on. So they would dig through my jewelry drawer and find all of the necklaces and put them all on all at once. And it's just fun and it's festive. But stay away from the plastic ones.
Yep.
Make masks.
Yeah.
It's fun. This is something that I did every year in the classroom that I really enjoyed with the kids is mask making. And so I kid you not, last night, burning the midnight oil, David Hargis went about making some mask printables for you based on Mardi Gras masks so that you can make them at home. And we want to give you the instructions to making these yourself.
Yeah, now to start off, if you want a copy of these, they're just totally freely available. We just wanted to share the fun, let you celebrate in your home.
Do you have a URL for that?
Yes, go to childoftheredwoods.com/masks, and it will redirect you to this template. And we'll keep that up for a couple weeks or something like that. If you are already on our email list, it'll ask you to put in an email, and then it'll send you the PDF version of it.
Okay.
Yep, that's how it'll work.
If you're already on our email list, do they still need to sign up for the printable?
And if you're in our community, if you're already a member of Child of the Redwoods, don't worry, you can download if you want, but we actually also just posted a copy of it in the community itself. So don't worry about going through the URL. You can just go right to the community. But for everybody who's not yet a friend in our community, then head over to childoftheredwoods.com/masks and you can grab your pack.
Yes.
Okay, now
I want to tell you about how I did this in the classroom because it was a very easy method. It was available often for the kids. I would take a template like this or like this, whichever one I wanted. Sometimes I would have multiple different mask options for the kids.
There are others, but I made a simple one for little guys and a little bit more complicated for the older set or for the bigs in the house.
Okay. So what I used to do is I would cut this out myself and then trace it onto a piece of like a little bit of cardboard from either a cereal box or from a cracker box. You know, you just really want that chipboard that's a little bit stronger than just paper.
Yeah.
And so tracing it on that, and that gives you a template for masks. And then your child is going to use that template that you have made on your little bit of chipboard to make their own masks. And what they're going to do with it is they're going to trace around it with a pencil onto some cardstock would work really well, some thicker paper, or you could use construction paper as well.
Yep, you could use more cereal boxes after you've made your template.
You could, but I'm going to recommend construction paper or...
Because it's easier to cut.
Yes, because it would be harder for your kid to cut on the chipboard themselves, but you can easily cut on the chipboard.
Yeah, I like the idea of the chipboard, and that's kind of what I was imagining here, is that because the last step is you're going to stick it on a pencil or something and hold it up as a mask, and so it's firmer.
That's true.
But
you could also put two pencils, one on each end.
Oh.
And that would work with any kind of paper you use. So this is just the way, I mean, you could do whatever you want at home, and David has laid out some lovely instructions for you. But the way I did it in the classroom was all of our templates went onto chipboard. They went on a tray. The kids traced around them, and then they did not cut out the eyes. They pin punched them, which is a Montessori trick that we use. You can just put a little bit of, you usually like something fluffy under it,
like
so
cork,
some foam
or
a cork board would work well, like a bulletin board if you have one to lay down. Or we also used little carpet squares, so a little piece of carpet, something like that, where your little thumbtack or what is it, just like a pin pusher can punch in. And that was just a much easier way for kids to do the eyes, because eyes are always really hard to cut out.
And it's also, I think you'll find that
also unsafe with chipboard.
And you'll find pin pushing in the Montessori curriculum too. It's good for fine motor and other things. So it's a win-win.
Yes. So if you've done that and your children are welcome, I would just get out that I would get out all your art materials and just let your child go crazy, decorate it any way that they like. There's no one way. Feathers are really, really common.
Glue on feathers.
If you have chickens at home, like go wild. But otherwise,
You can just
like,
paint them. I mean, you can use the more traditional colors, the purple and the green. But you don't have to. I would say this is a great time to go to the library and get some books on Mardi Gras, or just pull up some pictures
Yep.
on the internet and look at them and kind of inspire the child. This is a way to kind of start to extend the activity. But if your child's not interested in that, they just want to cut out masks and color them, that's great too.
That's right. Yeah. So anyway, go download your set. Give them the URL again. What is it again?
childofredwoods.com/masks.
Oh, so easy.
So easy.
So easy. Go get yourself a copy. No strings attached. Just go have some fun.
Yeah, and we'd love to see how this comes out. So if you are in our community and you guys make some masks, we'd love to see it. If you're not in a community and you're willing to share and you put it on Instagram, I'd love to see that too. It's always fun to see how families all over the world, speaking of Montessori is all over the world, we have viewers from everywhere who follow us. We would love to see how those things come to life at home. It's very gratifying.
It is. All right. Well, have a beautiful day, friends. This is where we're going to end.
Yep.
Go have fun. Show us, tag us in the comments or in your stories. I would love to see them.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.